What's shaking? See, this is why I do it again, because it's a different name. What's shaking? The Joy Revolution podcast with your boy Marc Cordon. Just in case we haven't met, I help folks disrupt the status quo with things like digital courses and TEDx's and podcasts and a whole bunch of other creative outlets. I'm going to get right to it today, y'all. Why? Because we get to talk about something that is near and dear to me, the idea of creating courses, the idea of education, the idea of just connecting with other folks with like minds. And this is a person that once we had one conversation, and in this conversation, we went from like strangers to like besties. That's at least my experience of this person. Same. So when it comes to our guest today, this person is, we got to talk about this at some point, a recovering academic who uses her 16 years of learning design and experience to offer course success support for overwhelmed solopreneurs and aspiring course creators that give a shit about what they put into the world. Dr. Katrina Mitcham, did I mess that up?
No.
I think that was
you
a
got
perfect...
the most important part in. They give a shit.
I know. Have it in red here. They give a shit, you know? And, you know, we're going to talk about all the things, but there was a time when I was in academics and I didn't give a shit. It looked like people were just taking tests to take tests. There wasn't a lot of movement forward, right? And I think we can go there. I want to talk about the social justice aspect of things. I also wanted to talk before we even started. Katrina, you have this really, really cool course accessibility checklist. We're going to be bringing it up through this podcast, but I want the listeners to just get to it right away so we can go and just listen and enjoy this podcast. How are you, my friend?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm living the dream. Now, with all the things that we're going to be talking about today, can we start here? Can we start with you being, it's not the spelling bee championship that you won, but like, you're like you're the eldest of 7 and you ended up winning this like trophy for reading. How do you win a trophy for reading?
You're a super nerd. That's how you win a trophy for reading.
You've always been a super... Like, what is the rubric to beat other people out and win this trophy for reading?
It was quantity. Or maybe it was pages. It might have been number of pages instead of number of books.
Okay.
But I've always been an avid reader, and I've always read things I probably wasn't supposed to.
Like what? At that age?
Yeah. My aunt was a librarian, and so sometimes I got things that were,
got it
appropriate, and her or my mother were.
So I was the exact opposite. I was a nerd, and I was the kid that wanted to like go after all the A's growing up, but I wasn't a reader. Like I don't know if this was like ubiquitous, but we'd go to the back of the room, and there are like these like folders with colors, and you'd pick out a story to read based on your color. And I just remember being like lapped from like folks who would be at the later stage, and I'm still here in the earlier stage, right? Were you like this? You probably weren't, but I had such social anxiety when we were reading aloud in class that I would go and I'd try to predict which paragraph that I'd fall on, and I would rehearse it. Okay.
I was not like that.
You're not.
I got asked to read things on the fly all the time. When my cousin got married, my sister was supposed to read something during the ceremony, and she had a head injury and was struggling that day. And so I walked up, had never seen the thing that I was going to read before, and read out loud in front of a church full of people. So I don't have that problem. However, I know folks that do. I think being able to like teachers should be telling kids ahead of time which paragraphs, because some people just need that like search through the things that you're going to read out loud in order to feel like, okay, I know these words. I don't need to ask how they're pronounced, because I know there are words that I have read and I'm like, I got to go ask Google how the heck to pronounce that, because I have no idea. And that's part of learning, right? When you're a kid, especially, that's part of learning to read.
It is. I think reading out loud was the most terrifying experience that I was thinking about. in the day-to-day class setting, you know? Now, did you
Yeah.
know that, you know, when you were going to grow up, you were going to get a PhD, you were going to be in the education space, or
I was so set against being a teacher. I was one of like 3 people in my graduating class in undergrad that had a degree in English,
okay.
a degree in literature, but not a degree in teaching. 3 of
Whoa,
us.
okay.
Yeah, I was not doing it. I was just following the thing that I was interested in. I love to read. And so that's what I did.
That is super super interesting. You know, my love for education came from, and I'll never forget this. I actually keep this in my desk somewhere. In my freshman English class, because I'm the son of immigrants, you know, came here with nothing. You know, the immigrant story, made a way for themselves, and I was gonna be that doctor, right? As a result of everything that they sacrificed, right? And so I went into undergrad, knowing that I was going to be a medical doctor. And I just remember my freshman year, his name was Boyd White. He was a grad student doing English 181, right? And I just remember I was like, I don't think I'm going to have the ability, or I won't be given the opportunity in the future to like write whatever it is that I want to write about. And I remember writing about Bruce Lee. I just wrote about Bruce Lee, right? And how I watched every one of his movies, right? And I remember getting this note back from Boyd saying, "Hey, dude, you've got like a real gift here. And if you wanted, you could go and write for things like Spin or, you know, these pop cultural magazines, you know." And I just remember thinking like, "Oh, that's nice. It's just not going to be me. You know, I'm going to be that doctor." And how I kind of positioned myself out of that space where learning and education were going to be like super fun. I feel like I'm living a great life. And it just wasn't an opportunity for me to go through, for me to take up. It was the doctor, you know. And but so I wish that I would have followed my heart, but I ended up being in education too, you know, campus life. So okay. So the PhD, because I'm gonna give you the breadcrumbs. I'm gonna ask questions that lead up to you leaving academics. But like, let's create this right now. You're going after the PhD. You're following your heart, like you were talking about. You know. So what's going on here? What's going on here when you're in the doctoral program?
Yeah. Well, I will say that the doctoral program wasn't entirely 100% just
Okay.
following my heart.
Oh, okay.
Because I started with a master's degree, and that degree was in professional and technical writing. And I got that degree assuming that that's what I would get out and continue to do, because had been doing a lot of document design, and I had worked for a small printer, and I really just I loved working with all the Adobe products, basically, is what that comes down to. And I was good at writing instructions, like very clear, very good at that. And then I taught a class at
Okay.
the community college.
Okay.
And I was like, I actually love this. That's where it was. My very first, it was a developmental writing course. I remember most of the students that were in that course, even though it
Mm,
was 2008, a
mhm,
long time ago.
mm.
And that led to me teaching adjuncting,
What
right?
about it
Which
did you like? Were you the Boyd White?
I liked that I could do it differently, right? Like I was not a stand in front of the room and talk at you kind of person. Like we wrote, and they wrote and wrote and wrote, and they read and read and read, and they probably hated me for it.
Did
At
they?
least while it was happening. I got good reviews, right? But while it was happening, there was grumbles. There were
There were
grumbles.
grumbles.
There were.
Well, what about on your end?
What do you mean on my end?
Like, so there were grumbles on you know, grumbles. You had them writing and writing and writing. Like, what was the meaning that you assigned to it so much that you're like talking about this course that you taught in JUCO?
Yeah, I think because it was so in developmental writing courses, they are the students in community colleges who aren't able to take the 4 credit classes yet, right? So something has been deemed about their writing in
Hmm.
some sort of placement test that they're not good enough.
See, it's those
And
folders from the third grade again.
exactly. It is. It's those folders. And when I got the first set of writing from them, and it was just in class writing, I could completely and totally understand everything everyone was saying. Right? And so that was the point. That's the point of writing.
Wow.
I mean, sometimes it's about the beauty of the craft, right? But when you're doing a freshman writing course, it's not about the beauty of the craft. It's about being able to be understood through a specific medium. And I had a bunch of students that their confidence had just been smashed and they got nervous in tests. And so some of it was being able to, reignite that confidence. Sometimes I feel like I didn't actually teach them anything. All I did was give them some confidence, and they knew how to use commas and semicolons when they left my class, and then that's it.
I do because I was working in a campus life. I feel like part of just education in general is possibly instilling in them confidence, versus breaking people down. I have a feeling that's why I went into positive psychology as well. Is those red marks can be traumatizing for folks to the point where I'd look for the red marks first before I looked at what went well, and how much has that kind of crafted into the way that I look at my life? Do I always look for those red marks first? And then, I just want to commend you, because having someone be seen and heard and felt is a big fucking deal. That's why I was in multicultural affairs for so long, because a lot of people are coming in feeling invisible. And my goodness, you're doing the work in the classroom to get folks to feel like that. Was there a particular student or a particular piece that you had read and maybe given feedback to somebody, and you can tell it's changed their trajectory in the way they've seen their self or their academics? Anything come up for you? Any person?
Interestingly enough, I had a student, a former student, that I think he wasn't in that very first class. I think he was in the second semester. But he was in one of my developmental writing classes, and he took me for all of the writing classes at the community college. And
Nice. You had a fan.
I did have a fan. I collected students. But he messaged me earlier this year because he is writing a book.
No shit.
So he messaged me to let me know that he was doing it and to thank me. And
Nice.
this would have been 2008, 2009. So 15. God, I'm just wait, I'm not that old. 15 years ago.
What is the book on?
It's fiction, so it's not, not something in my wheelhouse, but it doesn't have to be, right? It's about understanding the different genre conventions and how you write in certain spaces and how it's expected in certain spaces. So, yeah.
So why aren't you
at the community college?
Just in terms of being faculty in higher education?
How long do we have?
Let's go.
Yeah, there are a lot of reasons, but I think that the overworked, underpaid narrative that goes around is a lot of it. And that overwork it's expected. It's expected that you do a bunch of service on top of the teaching, and teaching of writing is a lot of work because it's a lot of reading and it's a lot of commenting if you actually want to do it well. I think the thing that led me ultimately to leave was I had taken on in 2020, right, when the world blew up and everybody went online. I was one of two people with extensive experience in teaching online. And I stepped into an interim director role for our online writing. So for our online campus. And
Were you super stoked about that?
I was actually.
Good.
I was remote. I was a remote employee there the whole time. And so it felt like a unicorn opportunity because it's not one that comes around often. And it was a position that I had written about this position in a course on writing program administration. And I was like, you know what? Online campuses need online administrators. And so I saw it as an opportunity, and I jumped in and I helped, and then I burnt out really really bad. I have a chronic illness, and the stress of the job just made it worse. I ended up going on FMLA and then bounced.
Right on. Yeah. High five. You know what? I'm not going to go in and completely shit on education, especially the area where I came from in terms of higher education. But we were having talks, right, about what is this going to look like when we start shifting towards remote education and all of those things, and what was going to happen to the brick and mortars versus online education. And I remember being like, this is going to be more accessible to folks.
Oh yeah.
you know and it is now, especially with what happened a couple years ago. And what's interesting still is, even though there might be even more remote opportunities, that whole, like, I don't know if it's a zeitgeist or something like that. You know the words better than I do, but like the whole culture of a lot of higher education is, you come in, you have a specific responsibility, and then there's a whole bunch of other things that are not written on the job, in the job requirement, including, like, I remember, homie, like, we were expected to put in a lot of hours, and then I was expected to go and look for drunk kids during the Smash Mouth concert. And I was just like, is this what I really want to be doing with my life as I'm entering the Smash Mouth concert, And it's interesting because it's not only campus life, but it feels like faculty too. I didn't know if you were, as a remote professor, that if you were brought into any of the meetings, we'd have a lot of meetings as to what we should name the statue, or what's, like all the other things that would go on. And next thing like I was burning out too. I loved what I did, but at the same time, like, when I wanted to start a family, it didn't work.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a lot. I think that, so I'll share that when I decided to leave, I had someone call me a sellout. And so I think that perfectly encapsulates like the whole vibe,
What were
right?
you
Like,
selling
if
out to?
I consult with an ed tech company,
Okay. Wow.
and so that being a sellout apparently. But anyway, I think that encapsulates the whole culture of, you need to not just give, you need to overgive.
Yes.
And I think that's why we're seeing so many people leaving. I mean, there's an entire Facebook group called The Professor is Out that has tens of thousands
Dude,
of
I'm
people
all
in
about
it.
that. I'm all about The Professor is Out. I'm gonna put that in the show notes so we can get people to. Well, what was interesting too was orientation, when new students were coming in and staff and faculty were working with students. I remember multiple people saying, "Look, you've got this triangle here now that you're in college. There's the social stuff, there's the part, and then there's the co-curricular part." And the message was, you'll never go for all three. You have to sacrifice one. You know what I mean? And it's like, I get it, kind of. But what if you were to put all of those things together? That's actually why I went into positive psychology, where it's like, why do we have to have two out of the three? What if we helped our students to really get a great education, to really think outside the box, to maybe have a little bit more esteem than like knocking them over, And maybe they can find that flow where all of three of those things come together. Now, I do that with my clients. I no longer do that with anything that has to do with higher education, because that's not where me. I mean, you had a different interface with the university, but did it have similar things with, like, oh, you can only have like social and education and co-curricular? Like, did those things show up?
I don't know. I can tell you the programs that I was, or the committees, I guess, that I was a part of that
Well, you were the
tried
director
to,
for a while. You have to go to.
yeah. That's true. So it was for the online campus, and so our online students it's a different student population, right? So they're adulting adults
They're adulting.
that are often like caretaking both ends of the parents and the children, right?
Yeah.
And have full-time jobs, and the laundry list of things that are going to be more important than my class.
Sure.
As they should be.
Sure. And when you were director for the time that you were, Were you helping your staff through, like, take it easy? Like,
Yeah.
so you were.
Yeah.
What did those
So a
conversations
lot of
look
it
like?
was, so part of that job was actually designing the courses that the faculty were going to teach because we taught from a pre-designed course. But giving them options, right? And letting them have choices and what is important to them to teach the students.
You're talking crazy talk.
I know what? Options, choices, what? Not standardization? So, yeah, and I mean, I was supporting faculty who, like at the time, because of COVID, a lot of them had accommodations to not come in because they had XYZ happening,
Hmm.
right? And so they were teaching online, not necessarily because they wanted to, but
Hmm.
because they had to. And so helping, some of it was just understanding the technology and paring down some of the technology so that it didn't become cognitive overload. Because if you've got a teacher with cognitive overload and then students with cognitive overload, that's just a recipe for disaster.
You just
And so a
said
lot of that
cognitive
job
overload.
was faculty support. It was a
Yeah.
lot of faculty support
Yeah.
by making something that their students could do as
Oh
well.
my gosh. And I mean, talk about technology, like kind of tripping everybody up, like the thing that pushes them over the top, you know? I remember, as an undergrad, oh gosh, I learned some great things, but I remember like our professors coming in, like kind of disheveled, like they've got a whole thing of papers in their hands. There was a professor who did, like, half of his members only jacket was on. You could tell he was like rushing out, and it's a tough thing because part of the culture is hustle and go big or go home, and at least from my perspective, the students were doing it. I saw the professors doing it, and our staff was doing it. Like it's almost like this a badge, like, oh, I worked X number of days in a row. Like, why? It was my son too. When he came into the world, I was like, no, this is weird. And I don't know about you, but I was also like, for this amount of hours, I'm getting paid piddlywinks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. As someone who is teaching in Arizona and living in California, I like feel that.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, when you left higher education, did you feel like you were defeated, or was this like, hallelujah, I'm out?
It was hallelujah, I'm out. I did not leave feeling like a failure. I left feeling like the industry had failed me.
Wow. Yeah.
In large part because things like, so the chronic illness I have is multiple sclerosis. And so with that, when something happens, like I don't know exactly what I'm not going to be able to do. Sometimes I might lose vision in my eyes. Sometimes I might not be able to feel the keyboard in order to be able to touch something. Sometimes it might be mobility, like I might not be able to walk across the room. And then I guess, of course, I could continue sitting at the computer. But my inability to articulate that meant that they couldn't accommodate me in any way until I got to the point where I couldn't like reach out. Like if I'm in the hospital, I'm
Yeah.
certainly not going to be emailing saying, well, I need an accommodation for X, Y, and Z. And so some of it was feeling just like it wasn't a place for me.
Sure. Sure. I'm not sure how much your MS has come up. It feels like it was coming up around the time, like a lot around the time that you left. How's that going now?
Good.
In a good
I
spot?
mean, good as it can be. Right. Yeah, it's under control and I'm doing and taking things one day at a time.
Yeah. Yeah. So now I want to talk about the recovering academic. I almost said recovering alcohol.
Not that one.
Not that one. I'm sure there's a 12-step program for academics.
If not, there should be.
There totally should be. I'm going to post that in the Facebook group tonight. So, recovering academic. Talk to me, Goose.
Yeah. So some of it, well, I guess a lot of it came up when I was trying to write because for so long, my own written voice has always been very casual and conversational. I had a very hard time taking my written voice and fitting it into the academic style.
Got
And
it.
so most of my stuff is co-written because other people could come in and higher ed me up, right? But I still had fallen, 15 years of of writing and publishing in higher education took a toll on my voice. And sometimes it was stilted and didn't feel like me. And like the idea of not having to go grab all of the sources, right, that I had
Yeah.
used. Like some of it was, I was calling it having to shake it out, right? Like out of my writing voice. And I think that was for me, that was one of the first steps of starting to recover, was realizing that like normal people don't feel like they have to cite every single thing that comes out of their mouths.
I absolutely love it. I absolutely love it. What I still have to, like, when I'm creating like any course or presentation, it still needs to be an APA format. It still needs to have the references. I feel like someone at any point is going to say, which philosopher said this?
I know.
I'm just introducing myself, y'all. No philosopher. Okay, so now we're going into a place where we're out of higher education. You're out of that sort of environment, and yet you're using your skills, you know? And was this something in terms of like being able to help folks to actually create courses that they give a shit about and make an impact in places that they give a shit about? Was it like, yep, I'm going to go and take this and I'm going to go out and I'm going to do that? You know, because from the standpoint of where I was coming from, I left campus life and I was just like, it's going to be super easy for me to be a life coach, you know, because I'm doing that sort of extracurricular, what am I going to do with my life type of thing, you know? And for you, was it like, I'm just going to use the skills that I got and I'm going to move in and I'm going to start my business?
It was not like that at all. And I think in part because me leaving, it was panic. Like I was leaving. I left in January after the semester started. I had to get out.
Oh, wow.
Had to get out.
Yeah.
And so when I first made the decision, I thought I was just going to get out and get a job.
Hey, are you picking up what I'm throwing down here? Are you digging the Joy Revolution podcast? If so, I invite you to subscribe on this platform. Now, if you want more, I have an online community called The Underground. It's free to sign up. In there, you'll find mini courses inspired by podcasts like this one. You get to connect with other community members. I'm in there. The link's in the description. Let's get back to the episode.
Right. Instructional designer was one that I had looked at because I had all of these years experience designing things online. Different industry, different audience, same processes. I thought I was going to do content curation because that's another thing pretty similar to the things that I'd like to do. I thought I was going to do UX research because that's something I'm good at the research. And I was doing a lot of user experience stuff in higher ed we had like a placement tool, a writing placement tool that was based on students' responses instead of things like GPA and SAT scores. Anyway, so I had experience in that. And as I was reading all of these, job ads, I was like, I can't do this. This is still too much work.
Sure. Yeah.
Even though the pay was better, it was still too much.
Did you know you were going to start your business? Start a business of your own?
I had formed my solo proprietorship in October, the October before I left. So I did have an idea. I had a website, all that good fun stuff. I initially thought that I would help people like doing more done for you, like building it for them. That's a rabbit hole I'll never jump down again. Nope, not doing that one. And I very quickly discovered that doing more consulting on the process, because everybody's course is going to look different. It should look different. They're all teaching different things. And so there wasn't really me taking the things and building something was not going to create a good product. I mean, I could. It's just a lot more back and forth than people tend to want to do. And so yeah, I did that for a while, and then I have shifted and, thrown spaghetti to see what sticks.
Yeah.
And then tried to find sort of the threads in the things that I'm doing. And that's how I landed on accessibility. Like everything that I talk about a course comes down to accessibility, whether that is functionally accessible, right? So it's got captions, it has alt text, the PDF is tagged in the right reading order. Like those are things about functionally experiencing a course. But also access to being able to use it, right?
Mm,
So sometimes that's transparency. Is
mm,
it clear why you're having the student do X? How is that going to
mm,
help them reach point B? Don't
mm.
ask me about the letter order there. But those kinds of things that are about taking a lived experience that someone
Yeah,
has had and trying to anticipate what they're going to
sure.
need from you in order to be successful in this course.
So let's talk about this even more because we've got the checklist, right? We're talking accessibility in terms of when you start working with folks or after all the things that you've seen. Are there, I guess this is the checklist, but like what were the most gaping issues and challenges that maybe higher ed did have it right and folks with a business could learn from that?
I think functional accessibility, higher ed did pretty well in terms of having captions. I will say, and I very recently posted about this, there was a time I had an online student who was losing his vision, and so he was using a screen reader.
Mhm.
And he had a PDF for another class. It wasn't my class, but he had it by the Disability Resource Center so that the screen reader could read it. But they didn't tag the footer as an artifact. And so at the bottom of every page, the
With
screen reader was reading like the DOI and the page number and
nice, amazing.
yeah. So I fixed it for him. But like those kinds of things, sometimes they don't always, like the heart's in the right spot,
Sure,
but sometimes they don't always catch everything. But yes, functional accessibility, I think course creation industry can learn from higher ed.
Got it. Got it. There's a lot of software out there, learning management systems and stuff like that. If somebody is going through this, it's their first time going through this. What are some things that they can go in knowing, okay, you're just going to want to cover this, because I've seen a couple things out there where folks will want to like cram everything into a course and put it for sale, and like people never get past like the second module because there's so much fucking jargon and stuff like that. You know what I mean? A lot of other folks are like, keep it lean, move through, move through, move through. I was working with somebody a couple weeks ago where and this might be incorrect, and you can correct me, please, but like even the way that the learning outcomes were stated, it's like, I'm not sure what you mean by those things, but what are the first things when people either are going to work with you or that you look for to just make great accessible content that really improves the person and what their desired outcome is?
Yeah, it actually is those course outcomes, right? I mean, if you don't have like you just said, right? If you don't have clear and achievable outcomes or goals, like one of the I often run people through SMART goals for
Huh?
outcomes because one, it's a method that most folks in the online business world are already familiar with. They're just used to doing it for themselves. And now it's about doing it for your potential client or your learner. Because I really think like everything has to build off of those. And I think if you have those and then take them and break the steps down, I think the mistake people often make, even if they do have goals, and
Mm-hmm.
let's say they're good, they
Yeah.
start with what information do they need instead of what do they need to do. And if you start with what do they need to do, you can then pull in just the right information to help them be able to do that thing. And folks are going to be much more successful.
This is the learning centered approach that you talk about. I think something that's interesting as well is, and I've done this, right? So I'm not accusing anybody. Well, maybe I'm accusing, but I would put people maybe in the same boat. Oftentimes I've come to a place and very early on in starting the business in being like, I know what they need. I'm going to make it without having any conversation with somebody about, I don't think I need that, And, I currently have a course called The Joy Revolution, which is, it merges positive psychology and creativity for social change, right? And I'm like, doesn't everybody want this? I'm just going to bring it all together. And it was through a couple of iterations that I realized I had gone through it absolutely incorrectly. I was using, great, I don't know, like theories and all these different, all these different approaches, but no one gave a shit about it. They just wanted to be seen, heard, and felt, and to lead a movement. And why didn't I ever think about co-creating it with them? You know, you're like, yup.
It's not just you, Mark. It really, honestly, and truly is not just you. Shaped the course creation industry actually goes back to YouTube. People were going to YouTube to learn, but they were smaller skills-based things, right? And so folks were like, oh, well, this is wildly successful. Why don't we just do more of them and make it bigger and package it with a bigger price tag? And so that, I think that's not the approach you took, but that's approach that a lot of people take just because it's what was done to them, right? One of the things that really made me buy that website in October was that I took a class.
Yeah.
I got in there and I was like, this is a disaster.
Wow.
And so
did you take the Joy Revolution?
Yeah, it's just, and I wasn't the only one, right? So I had that experience, and then I was talking to other people as I'm networking, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I took this course, and I took that course," and it was just, and the folks that are often teaching how to create a course are marketers, not
course
specialists in learning and education, right?
Yeah.
I am sure that a lot of what you did was probably really good. You just needed more feedback on it. And for you, coming out of higher education, that's not something we often get to do. At least not on that first iteration. We don't get input from learners.
Agreed. And, I was coming from, and one of the cool things is I get to be in these spaces now with people like you, where we can talk about our experience in higher education and talk about how we've either integrated it or we've been able to say, okay, this is marketing. This is a marketer. This is the person's course. I have a colleague actually who got her PhD in higher education and was taking a course by somebody. If I name the name, everyone will know. And I just remember her going through certain things and just being able to think like, yo, we were in the same doctoral class on like learning outcomes, my friend. But in many ways, like it seems very different because now in higher ed, when I got to teach a class or a practicum, I wasn't worried about getting somebody into my class. They had to take this class, Whereas now you've got multiple classes of the same thing, and how are you going to distinguish yourself from those things, And then you also have the client who you're looking to have that transformation, with. And then also, this is new to me too, or this was new to me then. Not only do they take this class, but you also have this like perceived long-term value of like, okay, I want them to take 3 classes and to set it up this way, I guess we had those sort of learning, those sort of learning pathways, but it wasn't at the level that it is here. You just kind of know someone's going to take a course or multiple courses in higher education versus here where it's like, if your course sucked, they're not coming back. They're going to go to somebody else's, and it's hardcore,
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm interested in how you perceive AI and course building and all the things that are going on nowadays. I think people will be like, oh my gosh, the advent of AI means the downfall of learning, And in terms of the course creators, like, we're screwed. What is your take on that?
I think that assuming that AI could take a course creator's position is assuming that AI knows what people want. Can it learn eventually? Maybe.
Yeah.
But right now, unless you're putting in the information to describe who it is you're serving, AI is not actually that good. And it's also pulling from some pretty terrible examples right? And so they're all kind of like the same canned
Yes.
outlines of what a course should be. The only time I've gotten it to give me anything decent is when I asked it to act like an instructional designer,
Look at you.
interestingly enough. But even then, it was kind of the same examples and the same types of activities. And because AI can't be creative, right? It's basically guessing what the next word should be based on all of the words that they've seen in the same order from us. And so it's like it's just a vicious loop. And so if we want courses that are going to be catered to exactly what we're trying to teach, then we need to be more creative about the things that we're doing. Like somebody had come to me about wanting to do a course on teaching voice acting and doing it online.
Wow.
And that becomes a question of, ooh, so what tool are we going to use so that you can give
Exactly.
them feedback? And you don't have to be in the same room with them all the time.
Yeah.
And so AI can help with that, but you have to know what questions to ask.
Completely. Yeah, you
And
just
so, yeah, that's my take. It's helpful for some things. Will it get better? Probably.
yeah. Yeah.
Right now, like I just don't like to panic.
I feel the same as you. It's a input in, input out type of thing, and if you input shit, it'll output shit. You know, it's not a mind reader. And what I really love about this sort of creative space that we're in right now is that, like you said, if we can come in and creatively look at these two things, like voiceover, online, I think it can assist. It's a great assistant, but it's
Oh
probably
yeah.
not a great, like, write this course on, I don't know, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to go back again. I'm all over the place today because I'm so excited.
Okay.
What are the things that we keep messing up on when it comes to us creating our courses?
Well,
Because
I
you're talking
think
about how to start, but what are some of the things that, in terms of what are we messing up on, Katrina?
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think you already mentioned it, right? Not the mistake that you made of not talking to people,
Yeah,
right? And
yeah,
co-creating. So I will say that sometime, like some folks, the idea of not having something prepared and just winging
yeah.
it, like gives them a panic attack. And that's totally understandable, right? And so a lot of times it's this balance between the thing you're trying to teach and who you're trying to teach, and
Mm,
finding the right balance that should be across the whole course. You need that balance, because if you can't support it, then it's going to fall apart. If the content isn't what they want, then it's going to fall apart. If they don't have access, then it's going to fall apart. And
yeah,
so, I mean, it's not easy. I think one of the mistakes people make is assuming that it's easy to just throw together content and call it a course and have it be successful. So I think having a course map, and you can do a course map at any stage. You could do a course map, I recommend, in the beginning, but if you've already got something and you're like, this isn't really that great, or I don't like it, or they don't like it, or I can't get anybody to finish, I can't get anybody to give me a positive review, whatever it is, you can go back and retroactively map what are the goals? What am I asking them to do? What content do I have? Oops, what content do I actually need? Right? So you can reverse map a course. I think a course map is a beautiful overview to see the whole forest through the trees of however many modules you've got.
and a course map being, I want to make sure that I have this correctly, similar or dissimilar to a syllabus. Is it the same thing? Because I'm thinking of,
No, I
educate me.
think, yeah. So I think perhaps like the schedule at the end can be pulled out of a course map, but a course map would have all of the goals
Mm-hmm.
mapped onto the steps that you're
Mm-hmm.
asking them to take, so that you can make sure that the steps are leading to the goal, and then breaking down those steps into tasks and listing those as well, and then identifying what you need to, so if you're doing it preemptively, what content needs to happen, what format should it be in, right? Video doesn't have to be the only way you deliver content.
Modalities. Yeah, completely.
Audio works, visuals, good infographics, and then articulating the why. right?
Mm-hmm.
So why are you giving this information? How is it going to help? Why are you having them do this task? How is it going to help? Mapping it into, so some folks like to use a table. Like when I did this in higher education, I often used a table just because that I could easily give to instructors and they could see it too before they taught a class. Personally, always actually map them in Miro because I like being able to, like, I would probably do sticky notes if I had a big enough wall.
Oh, you gotta love the sticky notes.
But
Going
Miro
analog
serves.
and putting them on the
I
analog's
literally have
awesome.
one on the wall next to me.
I feel you. Yeah,
But Miro is how I do that on the
got it.
computer because then
Okay.
I can move things around, and if something like well, that doesn't actually belong there, then I could take it out really easily, that kind of thing.
I think I may be very similar to that. I never know sort of the jargony stuff, but in working with clients, we're going to figure out, okay, where are you going to land? Where are you going to land at the very end here? And we can think of this as like, okay, we're a bus right now, and we've got a bunch of different stops, and like we can't go from one stop to the other stop without going through this light. And so we stop here, and we make sure that we have accomplished this, and that's how we measure it, and this is the modality of how we're going to teach this. So I'm kind of seeing you go like this.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. It's a plan like that. I would say the only additional thing is that you can start to layer other things onto it, like the why,
do
the
tell.
transparency,
Mm-hmm.
and also the accessibility. So things that you're going to have to do to make those things accessible, both functionally and in terms of completion and level. Like what level are you anticipating they're coming to you at? If you're teaching a beginning level or an intermediate calligraphy class, what about the people that come to you that maybe missed some things you normally would have taught? What are you going to do then? Are you going to make everybody go through it? Like, those kinds of questions where you need to understand how they're coming to you, which takes talking to people.
What talking to people?
Imagine that.
I want my AI. I want to be by myself. No, it's so kind of really feel fortunate that I came from a place like higher education where I might not know all the lingo, but to really know that, like, how do we teach something without having a learning outcome, how I just remember in higher education, folks were beginning to have like groups, research groups that came in to talk about like what could we have delivered the information this way, or would a lab help you with understanding these things? And if they're doing it, it's really cool to see those things happening from the business standpoint. You know what I mean? In terms of this, when it comes to these opportunities, I could see both places benefiting from some of the ways our lives are changing, right? For example, I mean, you talk about accessibility. I've been able to watch bootleg Harvard courses on YouTube. If you search the right thing, you're gonna get that kind of course, And I kind of love that. I kind of love the fact that people will go and take learning into chunks where it's like, okay, you can only do like 5 to 12 minutes. We're gonna put it in 5 to 12 minutes. I love the fact that everybody can be seen as a learner and a teacher. I love gamification and what it can do with all of those things. With you, Katrina, you see this on a regular basis. What are some of the things that's just lighting you up, and you can't wait for all of us to see it and use it and to learn and to teach? Like, what are some of the things that excite you?
Frankly, it's my own ideas excite me, Mark. So I think a lot of the problems in course creation, both in higher education and in online business, actually come down to the learning management system and course platforms.
Wow. Okay.
They're not, I'm just going to put it out there. They're not designed for learning. They're designed for content repository with the occasional activity. But the activity is always secondary to the content.
Wow. Okay.
So
I'm really happy that you say that.
I need a developer if anybody's listening.
Well, okay, what would you put into like your learning management system? Like, you've got all the money in the world to like create these things and test them out. What would you put into that?
Yeah, I mean the ability to let learners pull together their own threads of learning, right? The things that are important to them in each of the tasks. Because I think, as the systems are designed right now, something happens in module 1, but then it just stays in module 1. Like, how do we pull those ideas forward and have them interacting with their own ideas and their own work and their own thoughts and their own things that they did to continue on the path? Because that is how learning works. Right? Taking experience and taking knowledge and applying it to move forward into the next. We sign up for things like classes or university for change. Right? We want to learn things because there's something we want to change. And being able to pull things together in a way that's more organic than it currently allows would improve our chances of actually making that change.
You know, as you're talking about this, I'm thinking about I know education didn't start with these folks, but I'm thinking about sort of the conversations that used to be brought up, or at least what we're told, like with the Greeks, who'd be like, okay, let's sit in circle and let's really talk about like what goes through a decision, like how do we perceive this? Now, also like I'm also like thinking about that, and I was like, that was a bunch of old white dudes that were saying that, you know. So there's still a little bit of the multicultural stuff going on. But there does seem a return in many ways to things that you can't see online. You have to be in person to be able to do those things, you know? I don't know if I'm going to... Go ahead.
I think that you could do them online.
Talk
I think
to me
we
about
just
it.
don't have the technology that allows that kind of organic flowing from learned this and applied it in this way, and then pulling what you need into the next step or stage.
Wow.
Because
Wow.
it's not always just about talking, right? And some folks have auditory issues and
Look at you empowering
right?
the
Like,
different learning types.
It's all about, and it's all about accessibility. Like, I would argue sitting in a circle and just talking like the old white dudes is not accessible to a lot of people. Right? And doing that for hours. Oh my God, that's so exhausting. Introverts would like run screaming.
Yep. I'm really glad that you brought that up. I'm really glad that you brought that up because, yeah, I forgot that the learning types are so different, you know, just like being that kid who had a hard time like reading aloud in third grade. I remember how traumatic it was to be in a Bio 141 course of over 150 people and have our professor was there and she knew your names based on where you were to sit, and just that would come up. Some people could thrive on that. Other people would possibly go into fight or flight.
Yeah.
With that. And I remember multiple occasions where she'd call on me and I couldn't even move. I couldn't move, Katrina.
I mean, I think where everybody goes wrong is that it has to be about choices and options, right? And I think, you know, thinking back to history of education and the impact of various flavors of psychology on education, a lot of what formal education does now it has for a long time, is sorting people, right? And removing access from the people that it doesn't deem good enough.
Completely.
And I think that has bled over into the online business space, where people that create courses are creating them only for the people that are motivated to be self-taught.
Yeah.
But most people don't function that way.
No, not
most.
Do you feel like there's, because I feel like this is coming up, but like, do you feel like there's a major like education reform movement coming on?
I hope so. I don't know. It's a beast to move.
It is.
You know, when I was always an ask forgiveness, not permission. I was that kind of teacher.
Yeah. Did you have everybody like stand on their desk and do Dead Poet Society shit?
No.
Oh,
I mean, remember, I taught online only from 2010 until I left. So
sure.
Virtual desks, maybe.
It just, again, like when you're talking about things like YouTube and stuff, like, I mean, I remember getting this class at Harvard, and I was like, I don't have to pay anything. I don't have to test into this. I literally can just watch this. And have a better sense of positive psychology as a result, and I remember what I was when I had discovered positive psychology, it was like find bootleg courses or go to the University of Pennsylvania, which has a ridiculous tuition, and like you say, I hope it happens. I I revel in it, I revel in being able to go to my YouTubes and not have to
Yeah.
wait until August.
Yeah.
I revel when, something goes down and I get to learn something from something on YouTube. Every other video is a how-to, which is
Right.
very
Right.
cool.
And I'm imagining even with the Harvard courses that are they're just giving you information, right? It's just lectures, but you're interested in it enough
Mhm. Yeah.
to take that information and see how to apply it somewhere. And that's the thing. Like people talk, "Oh, I can learn from books." Yeah, but are you taking notes on the
Mhm.
book? Are you
Mhm.
writing in the margins, or are you writing on paper because you can't write in the margins?
Yeah.
Right? I've got a library book right now. I'm not writing in the library book. I promise. I have a notebook. But that's how you can't just deliver content. Content has to be engaged with in order for you to get something that you could use from the
Completely.
information.
Completely.
And you're doing that because it's something you're interested in.
It's what happened with the Joy Revolution, as well as like being able to get some grants as a result of watching that bootlegged class. I was telling somebody earlier today, look, you can study as many books as you want about sex, but if you haven't
Yeah.
actually participated in it, it's something very different, my friends.
Yeah, that's a perfect example. I'm probably going to use that one. It explains learning so much.
It does. And like I said, there's so much cool stuff, especially after talking to you about what might be coming up the pipe. LMSs that haven't been developed yet. And I also think online communities, like what is that going to look like to integrate those things? We've got things like what's the Mighty Networks who do that. They couple learning with community. Like a lot of cool things and a lot of cool things to look forward to. A lot of cool things to look forward to. I don't know if you've ever seen my podcast before, but I have a producer named Manny who has a game about joy that he wants to play with you right now. Would you be at all interested playing this game? And you know what? I guarantee that you won't get stressed out about it.
Sure.
But no one ever wins it either.
No one ever wins the game
Nope.
of joy. I don't know about this game.
No one ever wins it. You see, what Manny does is he goes and talks about how you embody joy. And I totally see the work that you're doing as one where you are empowering other people to like really, really educate people around things that they give a shit about, And so that's kind of your joy revolution. And I think Manny just wants to ask you questions about how you embody joy. That's something you would.
Sure,
Will you
why
be the
not?
first person? Okay, I'm like, will you be the first person to deny Manny the honor? Okay, so I'm gonna read the prompt. You answer it, whether one word or as much as you'd like, and then Manny's gonna give you the feedback, kind of like education.
Kind of like
He
education.
wants you to take a test in which he
A
will
joy
be the
test.
arbiter, which he will be the arbiter of whether you're right or wrong. The best of education right now, right? Okay. Here's the first question. Joy sounds like
Laughter.
Manny. I'm looking into Manny's booth right now. He's got his hands on his tummy and he's laughing like this. He's joyously laughing. Yeah, he wants me to give you 1 point. Congratulations. Congratulations, Dr. Katrina. Okay, so he's got another one for you. Joy smells like
Bananas.
bananas. He's got this like platinum plate with, like one of those covers above it, and he's pulling the handle off, and it's bananas. He's taken in a hit. Congratulations. Joy does smell like bananas. Man, he's like in a great mood today. No one ever gets 2 points. All right, you've got two. Joy looks like.
The ocean.
Right. There's a studio door there, and Manny is opening the door, and it is the ocean. He's looking at it right now. A single tear is coming down. +1, 3 points. I've never seen this before. Katrina. All right, here's the next one. Joy feels like
A rabbit.
a rabbit. Manny has another platinum thing with a handle on it. There's a rabbit underneath, and he's feeling it. No, he said, this is not what joy feels like. -1,000 points. You are at -997 points. I told you, this is a hard game.
Funny.
This is a hard game. What do you think the last question he's going to ask you?
I have no idea.
Okay. Got it. Joy tastes like...
Coffee.
He's got another one of these platinum plates, and he's opening it. It's coffee. He's taking it. He's taking a swig. He likes it. +998 points. Mitchum, congratulations. You passed the game 1 point. See, I told you it's super stressful. You actually are going to go to the extra credit round, which is from me. Okay. So my extra credit question for you is, excuse me. So I do talk about like people going and pursuing their joy revolutions. I'm actually very serious about the course that I teach, the ups and the downs and the all arounds of me getting to that place. But I get to see people on a regular basis go through their joy revolution, a place where they find their voice, a place where they have agency in the world, a place where they can make mistakes and do over without feeling like they're being judged 24/7, you know? And so there's two things that I think about when it comes to a joy revolution. Number one, and you may have felt this, I've felt it multiple times in my life, a joy revolution where literally your heart, you can feel it, and you can feel it like overflowing, that inner joy revolution that you feel, right? Another form of a joy revolution is using joy as a way for social change or for human evolution, collective effervescence, right? And so there's that outer joy revolution that's going on. I'm going to ask you, what's your joy revolution now? And I want to hear what your joy revolution is. So, Katrina Mitcham, what's your joy revolution?
I'm actually going to say both flavors because I have turned off some of the need to do things that are outside of what I love to do, which has freed up enough time for me to do things that are more fun for me. And so, like, my word of the year was fun, and I've been having a lot of it.
Wow.
And so that's my internal joy revolution. We've been traveling and doing all kinds of, we played a new game last night, Story Cubes. If you haven't played Story Cubes, I highly recommend it. But remembering the things that I love to do and picking up things that I was like, I've always wanted to do XYZ.
And isn't
and
that
I've
what
only been able to, yeah, exactly. And I've only been able to do that because only focused on the outside pieces that really matter to me. Creating accessible courses, because I think removing barriers to learning is really the only way we all move forward together.
Yeah, I feel you on that. And it was, I feel like this whole recording was a love letter to the joy revolution that you have. And so it's been really fun to talk about it. It's been fun to play. And I'd like to think that hopefully you had some fun in here as well. If you guys go to the show notes, there is a course accessibility checklist. I've got the link in the description. Y'all, on behalf of Manny and Dr. Katrina Mitcham, I want you to follow your joy revolution. Follow it in love, in light, in shadows, and in joy, baby. Thanks, Katrina. All right, this wraps up another episode of the Joy Revolution podcast. Thank you so much for listening. And since you made it this far, go ahead and hit subscribe. Now, if you want to hear more podcasts, or if you're ready to engage with a community who will support and challenge you, if you're ready to start your own Joy Revolution, head on over to my online community, The Underground. The link is in the description. It's free to sign up. I've got a bunch of resources in there, including my own Joy Revolution course. So until next time, I'm Marc Cordon Creative. Dig deep, and I'll see you in the underground.